Hey everybody, this is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. My special guest today is the Director of Risk Management for Fox Roach, Kurt Miller. And we are going to touch upon a topic today that has been in the forefront of seemingly every realtor's mind ever since it became a household name within the past year. And that, of course, is Chat GPT. Chat GPT stands for Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and it was built by a company called OpenAI. And it can do some miraculous things. It truly is a wonder of modern technology. However, for all the good that it can do for your business, it is not perfect, and by no means is it infallible. So today, Kurt and I are going to discuss the risks involved with Chat GPT, what to watch out for, and how to protect yourself when using this new technology. And we're also going to talk about the top 3 causes of real estate lawsuits right now. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so let's get right into it with Kurt, and we'll pick it up on the other side. All right, for the podcast today, I am excited to have Kurt Miller on. He is our Director of Risk Management with Fox Roach. And Kurt, there is a lot to talk about today, so I'm anxious to get started with you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jason.
As we discussed, and I kind of got excited when we started to talk about our topic today, we're going to touch upon a few things, but we're going to start with the overwhelming looming tech that is out there and seemingly the conversation between every agent on the planet right now, which is Chat GPT. And I think it took a little while, even though it's been around for a little while. I think it's been, agents have been playing catch up with this technology, getting their hands on it and actually using it for their business. And now I think is the perfect time to discuss it because more and more agents are actually incorporating it into their business now. Chat GPT in general has had a lot of positive influence. So I want to mention that this is not damning Chat GPT per se. But there are some downsides and cautionary tales to tell about AI programs in general, like ChatGPT, specifically some legal troubles that can put us in hot water as agents if we don't know what to look for or pay attention to. So what are things that agents need to consider if they are choosing to use ChatGPT or other AI in their business right now?
Well, one of the first things that I think any real estate professional needs to understand before using Chat GPT or any other AI chatbot or AI service that essentially acts as your virtual assistant, let's say, in producing information, is that the term artificial intelligence or AI at this point is a marketing term. This is not powered by actual artificial intelligence. What it's doing is it's a complex probability table. And if you go online and search, you can actually see some blog posts by people who helped design this, who helped to sort of dispel some of the mythologies that are developing around this. Because as you mentioned, it's really growing in popularity. It's been picked up by many influencers, both in and outside of real estate, who are promoting its use. And it first came to my attention a while ago because, it was something to be concerned about because when it comes to AI services, copyright issues have been a real problem for a while. And that came out of the AI image software because you have companies like Getty Images, who are the biggest image companies in the world, who are highly litigious and get very upset when an AI service uses content from their own works to create something new. So there is some established copyright law that is out there to be concerned with. But the most important thing to understand before you get started is that it's a complex probability table. AI, quote unquote, does not have the ability to know or understand anything or how to apply context. It's literally Google with a probability table that can mimic human speech. It only knows what other people have created on the internet or inside of a database that it has access to. And then it finds correlations between what you ask and what is available that other human beings have created to create something that is quote unquote new, which depending upon how it uses it may not be new when using it. So yes, it does have its uses and it can be very useful, but at no point should any agent blindly trust anything having to do with an AI service for multiple different reasons, only one of them being copyright.
The other thing is that proofread what it spits out to you, right? If you had an assistant that it was putting in, let's just say, MLS remarks for you, they were writing up MLS remarks, wouldn't you proofread what they are actually writing, right? Just because it's coming from a computer program doesn't mean that you should automatically trust what it's saying, and it often gets it wrong, right?
Yes, and that's my biggest concern with Chat GPT is how many folks are out there promoting this to produce property descriptions. Because in my estimation and playing around with it, that's its most dangerous use potentially from a legal perspective. One, because how is it writing these? It's writing these by looking at other listings that are posted to the internet and pulling descriptions from them. So right away, you might be using information that is essentially copyright owned by someone else without permission. If you take a look at the terms of use of Chat GPT and OpenAI or any of these other services, they require you to indemnify them and to defend them if they are ever implicated in a lawsuit by your use of the product. So understand that going in, that using this can create these sort of situations, but can also put them solely on you as the user, even though it's a free service they're going to be using it for. Other reasons to be concerned with property descriptions is two things. There's a new term coming out in the use of AI called AI hallucinations. That's a really fancy term for make stuff up. And that's one thing that ChatGPT is really good at. So I'll give you an example. I did a quick ChatGPT prompt, just trying to see what it would do with a basic set of information. And I wrote, describe a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house to market it for sale. No other information that's there. So in its description, it writes, welcome to this stunning 4-bedroom, 3-bath home that offers a perfect blend of modern convenience and classic charm. Okay, great on the first half, second half, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Located in a desirable neighborhood. Is it? This spacious? Is it an immaculately maintained property to call your own? As you enter the home, you'll be greeted by a warm room that boasts an abundance of natural light and cozy fireplace. Does it have a fireplace? Perfect for spending time with family and friends. The upper level of the home. Does it have an upper level? So you see what I'm saying? I'm not going to go through the entire description, but even more as I played with this, I added in a paragraph worth of property features. It still would always create or have an AI hallucination of additional features because it was looking online to find properties like the one that you're describing, and then would pull in other features from like properties. So you consistently have to add more and more features into the description, and then you need to go in and cull everything that does not actually exist. At a certain point, what I found was it might be safer and more useful purpose of your time just to take a business writing course, because you're going to be writing the description anyway in the area. Why not just learn how to write a better description yourself? And the other concern from a marketing perspective is, even if you use ChatGPT for this and then you cull everything that doesn't exist, you're still losing your voice. If everyone uses ChatGPT and uses it appropriately, every description is going to sound the same, and there will be no difference. So what is the professional, competency that you're bringing to this, the distinct competency that separates you from the crowd? So you're adding in a lot of risk when it comes to not only property misrepresentation, a potential copyright violation, but also becoming basically washed out in this competitive marketplace because your description sounds like everybody else's that they're using. And there's one last thing that is concerning to me is it really does not understand fair housing at all. Even if you ask it to consider fair housing, it doesn't understand fair housing at all. And I want to give you one description here, and it blew my mind when I first put it in. So my prompt, this is very common, by the way, in rental real estate. Write a description of a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom rental unit in downtown Jenkintown, PA. No animals allowed. The landlord does not participate in Section 8 housing programs, which we don't recommend, but in areas of Pennsylvania, it is not expressly against the law to not participate. Applicants must provide proof of income and identity. Applicants will need to pass a criminal history screening. These are all common things that people and landlord might put inside of their description because they're trying to essentially let people know what their screening process looks like. So in the first paragraph, it says, welcome to a cozy 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom rental unit in the heart of downtown Jenkintown, PA. So far, so good. This charming apartment is located in a peaceful neighborhood that is perfect for young professionals, couples, and small families. There are 3 fair housing violations in the second sentence of that paragraph. Additionally, we put in, as a landlord, we're not allowing any pets in the property. We do not participate in Section 8 housing programs. So I put in things here, and I added additional prompts, which you can do. You start honing things by adding additional prompts. And I said, now edit this to comply with federal New Jersey state fair housing laws, which in the second sentence that was problematic, it put in, this delightful apartment is situated in a serene neighborhood. I guess that's better than peaceful, and welcomes individuals and families alike, adhering to federal and New Jersey state fair housing laws. That's not actually bad. You can say individuals and families alike. I just wouldn't mention either of those 2 things, but there's nothing that jumps out as being potentially problematic. The problematic item happens in the third paragraph of this description. As per fair housing laws, no pets are allowed on the premises, and the landlord does not participate in Section 8 housing programs. So it says, as per fair housing laws, we are going to potentially violate fair housing. It doesn't understand any of this. And then when you ask it to remove any references to Section 8, it goes back to violating fair housing in the second sentence and repeats peaceful neighborhoods, small families. It doesn't understand any of it. So my recommendation when it comes to property descriptions, and I also want to give a quick shout out here to John Fetterman. This is on my radar, but he pointed out to me from attending classes that a lot of people who were jumping on this were teaching things with glaring violations as the result and weren't pointing it out. So many thanks to John Fetterman for that, who's an agent of ours in Philadelphia. And it doesn't know how to handle it. And the more that you play with it, more instruction it gives, it can oftentimes just create more problems. So at this point, I would not recommend the use of AI or AI chatbots for producing property descriptions because it requires so much work. You're actually better off just writing it yourself and trusting in your own knowledge and ability to write the paragraph. And I'm not saying that might not get there eventually. It isn't there right now, but there are uses for Chat GPT in real estate that with some, again, review and editing can provide really good service, such as doing your own marketing letters, also producing profiles or resumes. It provides a lot of value there, but not necessarily, I think, at this point, the property descriptions. And unfortunately, that's what everyone is pushing this to do, is to write descriptions, which can be very problematic.
Yeah, and the fair housing laws is definitely the number one concern that I have, especially if you're an agent. Quite honestly, I mean, not agents obviously know the same things. And so if there are things that are sneaking past the radar of someone who's using Chat GPT and they're not up to date on real estate law at all, or, you know, they should know their fair housing laws, but if they let something slip that they shouldn't let slip, that can only lead to, you know, to problems down the line. And like you said, I don't want to sound like everybody else. You know, if it provides a template to me in certain situations that I can heavily edit, that's one thing. But like you said, I don't want to sound like you, and I'm sure you don't want to sound like me when it comes to actually doing these things. So for the sake of saving some time, you think it's going to save you time. But like you said, if you have to edit the whole thing, then that could be problematic. Number two, I have actually a good client of mine who is a graphic artist, and he is, I mean, he's amazing at what he does, and he's very successful, and he's kind of up in arms about the AI side of imagery. You had mentioned that earlier, that he's very much against it. And, you know, for specific reasons. I think it depends on your profession. Obviously, real estate is not the only profession that is using Chat GPT. There is a long list of potential problems that it can cause in many fields, especially copyright wise.
And there's another piece from the copyright perspective that people don't consider, and that driven from a lot of the AI court cases that have come through for images, which can be applied to the text generators from chatbots, is that anything AI creates cannot be owned by anyone. The courts have ruled that if AI creates something, even if you gave it the prompt and you reuse it as it was created by the AI, you may not own this. So anyone, if you produce this and don't alter it at all, anyone could copy and paste that and use it for their own purposes, and you would have absolutely no ability to challenge that because no one has any potential ownership of that content. So if you're using AI imagery, which is very difficult to edit, right, you almost have no ability to own that image at all. But if you're doing it as text, it's another great reason to go through and edit it. So as soon as you have human intelligence, right, human creative motive going behind the product, and you are editing it and putting it in your own voice, now you have the possibility of having ownership and say on how that is used. You don't necessarily have copyright over it, but at least you have the capacity to have copyright over it if it comes to that.
And that touches upon the next question that I have for you, because with the advancement of technology, it's hard regulatory wise. It's hard often to get ahead of an issue because it hasn't been discovered yet, right? You almost have to put it into use to think about practical terms of how do we regulate something like this. With that said, getting back to the real estate side of things, and I know this is kind of maybe getting ahead of our skis a little bit, but do you anticipate that brokerages and the real estate industry are going to pose future regulation on maybe some laws that they would incorporate themselves into how to use AI in regards to what we do on a day-to-day basis?
I would anticipate that it won't be necessarily AI specific, but I believe that any licensee who's going to be using AI in their sales service, whatever that product is going to be held to the same standard as if they had created it themselves. So we're seeing a lot of talk now, and by the way, we have more information coming about this in the near future, which is the upcoming changes to fair housing regulations for affirmatively furthering fair housing, the blueprint for the Renters' Bill of Rights. Essentially, a lot of these new regulations that are going to be coming out, and that's my opinion, there's going to be significant changes coming up in the relatively near future. It's going to apply to anything that AI creates on behalf of a brokerage as much as it would on a human being that would then put that out there for the brokerage on behalf of their clients. So I see the regulations being sort of more universal from a real estate perspective than anything that is going to be applied specifically to real estate or to an agent's use of it. But it does bring up a lot of interesting universal questions such as, who owns your image and likeness? Because that's some of the scariest stuff we see coming out is the ability for impersonation that comes out. That's not real estate specific necessarily, but that's something that I think the government should address is ownership of person's name, voice, and likeness, that people are granted that you cannot simply use it without permission. And I hope that's something that the government eventually catches up on before it becomes a huge problem. Because once scammers get a hold of AI, I can't imagine how problematic that could become, not only for real estate, for banking institutions, and the economy across the board.
I have heard on other podcasts the use of other people's voices, and some of these deep fakes and all that stuff with just for comedy purposes, right? Pretending to be maybe a famous person that they're incorporating their voice. And honest to God, there is going to be a large portion of the population that cannot tell the difference. And that is a very, very scary road to go down. I totally agree with you. So let me ask you this question, just finishing up on AI, because we're going to pivot to another topic here. Mm-hmm. But how has artificial intelligence changed what you need to think about in your profession on a daily basis? And has it complicated things exponentially for you? I mean, does it put a ton more on your plate nowadays to think about? And do you feel like you need to get out in front of a huge issue that's looming in the near future?
Well, I call it job security. In my profession as a risk manager, but there's always something new that's going to be the new product du jour that's going to come out. And the industry as a whole, our industry is very optimistic. Our industry is very proactive in wanting to help the consumer and help the client. And rightfully so, the client should come first. But when that comes in play, we have to start stopping and thinking about, is this new product or new technique that's coming out present any unintended dangers that I should probably think about or ask my manager about, who can then talk to us in risk management to help prepare everybody for. And that's kind of what I like to do in my role is I want to get ahead of things to be able to help educate all the practitioners out there that as they are working their their feet to the bone here, trying to help out their clients, that they don't unintentionally get themselves in a situation through that sort of over exuberance in helping out that client. They put themselves into a precarious situation either through copyright or because they missed a sentence that Chat GPT buried in the fourth paragraph of a description that they're trying to write. So yeah, I'm always trying to keep ahead of these things, and that's one thing that's going on with fair housing. The next thing I'm trying to keep ahead of is the Biden-Harris administration's approach to fair housing, the affirmatively furthering fair housing, also their blueprint for the Renters' Bill of Rights. I see a lot of essentially how real estate is going to be regulated from a fair housing perspective, changing significantly, all based upon the 2013 disparate impact standard, because that could be used to use data to then find inequities in housing and then apply solutions. Because one of the main thrusts of affirmatively furthering fair housing is going beyond just removing the structural barriers for protected classes to getting housing, but to address the 130 years, right, of community segregation that was in place because of these structural barriers. So it's not just removing the barriers, it's working to reverse those barriers. And the potential solutions for those could be very impactful to the real estate market as a whole. Again, is it a great intention to have? Absolutely, but it's going to be all about how it's applied. And we're going to take a close look at this and make sure that everyone is well aware of anything that moves over from the comment period, from the conceptual period, then becoming a regulation, because most of what we see coming down the road is not going to require legislation. It will simply be a regulatory change that is housed underneath the Fair Housing Act as it's written, particularly the statements of affirmatively furthering fair housing and the disparate impact statement, standard, not statement, sorry.
And there's things, ever since I got into real estate, every year something changes, right? Something that we need to be aware of, something down the line. Nothing is static. Everything kind of, progresses down the hill, and thank you for making us aware of that. And obviously something on the horizon that we'll need to consider. So while we're on the topic of talking about scary legal implications to real estate, let's segue into the top 3 causes of real estate lawsuits right now, because I think this is important for all agents to hear. And we're going to kind of start with number 3 and work our way backwards here. So let's start with number 3 in the countdown. Kurt, what is the first of 3 legal issues that often give you heartburn in risk management?
All right, number 3 with a bullet on the charts is acting as legal counsel. And I'm going to point my comments here because I know this is a podcast can be viewed by anybody, including consumers and clients alike. I'm going to point this to the consumers and clients out there. I want them to understand that their real estate agent and their brokerage is both legally and ethically prohibited from providing legal advice as part of their services as a realtor. Not only does each state that we cover prohibit a broker from providing legal advice, but Article 13 of the Code of Ethics expressly prohibits anyone from providing legal advice in their services as a lawyer, as a realtor as well. Even if they are a lawyer, past the bar, they cannot provide legal advice in their services as a realtor. And this is the area where I find that all this pressure comes in from clients and customers expecting to get legal advice from their agents. I would just advise them, please understand from the very get-go, there are going to be times that their agent is going to have to say, I'm sorry, that's a legal-based question. I'm unable to provide you an answer for that. They can give you, say, a link to the text. Most of this is readily available online. They can even quote a part of the regulation and provide it to you, but they cannot interpret it. They can't answer questions about it unless it's a direct answer from the regulatory body itself. And everything, the end of all of this should be, we advise you to seek legal counsel if you have additional questions, because they simply just can't do it. It's not that they don't want to do it, they can't do it. And when you ask them to do it, please understand your agents and brokers are so client-minded. All they want to do is help you. It's in every fiber of their being. You could potentially place them at risk because that line between a real estate service and a legal service can blur at times. And in wanting to help you, they will step over that line to help you, and you've placed them, unfortunately, in danger or at risk of potential liability. So I'll just say, just please understand that of your agents. Try to avoid placing them in that situation, and understand if you're a landlord and you have a question about whether or not you can charge 6 months of rent and security, that's simply something that they cannot, affirmatively answer, because that's a question about interpreting a law and any exemptions to that law that might be available. And they simply can't answer something like that. If you have a contractual issue between if you're a seller and you have a contractual issue in the agreement of sale with a buyer about what does this mean in our agreement of sale, the broker and the agent don't sign that document. That's between both of you. And we cannot provide legal interpretation over what does that mean or what the impacts of that are, or what your ability is to either terminate or not terminate that agreement. Again, that's a legal question with a legal answer. So again, that's number 3 with a bullet, because I would say that's the question I most answer on a weekly basis, is helping to guide everyone on where that fine line can be between a real estate service and a legal service. I was asking, again, customers and clients, be aware of that from the get-go, and please don't pressure them, because, again, they do everything they can to help you. Don't ask them to cross that line.
Yeah, and as agents, like you had mentioned, we are trying to be solution driven, right? Oftentimes, that one of our biggest issues as agents is that we have to be problem solvers, and the better problem solver that you are, typically, the better agent you are. And so we're out to solve problems, but a lot of times we do tread in a territory that can be murky and at best. And we want to always focus on, as agents, to the agents out there, we are not lawyers. We should not be writing anything into the agreement of sale that could be misconstrued for legal wording. And we see that a lot, and that is not a good thing. So always seek legal counsel. Okay. All right. So moving on to issue number 2, Kurt, what do you have for us?
Property misrepresentation, which you kind of touched on with the Chat GPT conversation. This is actually number 1. Nothing is even close nationally, right? Regionally, it's number 2 when it comes to lawsuits that actually end up going to court. And I have to say that our agents are really good about this and helping to make sure that they're at arm's length of any potential property misrepresentation. But the main driver of this is over the last 2 years. So we all know what kind of has been going on the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years. We've had COVID, we've had inventory challenges, to say the least. And most impactfully, we have seen it become commonplace for buyers to waive home inspections. Please understand, if the seller is not getting a pre-listing inspection and a buyer has waived their rights to a home inspection, there's literally no one with any idea of what they're looking at the property. Now, from a buyer perspective, please understand that the seller can only disclose what they reasonably know. They are not inspectors. They are not contractors. They don't necessarily know when a pipe is about ready to burst, or if there's a crumbling foundation or something of that nature. So again, it's very sort of difficult to expect that seller to have that level of knowledge and expertise. They're not a structural engineer. They're not an inspector. From a seller's perspective, what sellers should understand is, if they're accepting waived inspections and they're not doing pre-listing inspections, all of the pressure now is on their seller's disclosure, especially in Delaware and Pennsylvania, where these are required. So again, in lack of any other expert looking at the property, all the pressure is on the seller's disclosure. And I have to say, probably once a week, and it used to be 3 times a week, we receive subpoenas. Now, we are not named in the subpoenas because we have awesome agents who do a great job of making sure that they're providing services within their real estate bounds. But it's a lawsuit from the buyer to the seller claiming that you should have known about this that came in. And it just is a common thing. So my recommendation to everybody out there is, as a buyer, please understand that, yes, Some sellers might prefer not having a home inspection, but again, understand what that could potentially mean when you're making that offer. And from a seller, I would strongly advise the potential of getting a pre-listing inspection to get that monkey off of your back. And by the way, you can take that pre-listing inspection, hand that right over to a prospective buyer, along with your seller's disclosure, and then you're pretty well as close to being bulletproof as you're going to be. I'll never say you're bulletproof, right? But you're pretty close to being bulletproof, and get all that monkey off your back and not have to worry, hopefully not have to worry about getting any sort of a subpoena or a lawsuit coming your way over a defect that you did not know about and you didn't have an inspection take place for the property. The second part of doing property misrepresentation is to make sure we're describing properties, that we're not being overzealous in describing properties and making statements about features and the quality of features inside of a listing. And this is more targeted towards agents as opposed to just the existence of said feature. Because any qualitative statement about a feature could be used by the buyer as a procuring cause of sale. And that if it isn't of the quality that was advertised, that could be the grounds for something. We don't see this often, I have to say, because our agents do a great job of this. But it's another thing. I saw this more in my line of work in the MLS than I saw in working with Fox and Roach, where people making overstatements about the quality of a property that end up creating a problem down the line.
And since you had worked for a number of years for both Trend and Bright MLS, did you, and just that this is an aside, do you see a lot of squabbling about square footage in the MLS?
Not a whole lot, I'll be honest. It's come up a couple of times. I guess maybe it just doesn't make to me. Maybe the sales leaders and office managers are handling it pretty well. But it's one area of providing information for interior square footage is the understanding that none of the agents are certified to make the measurements or the statements of measurements, and that anything that's provided, and actually Bright has a really strong disclosure on this, is that everything is deemed to be accurate, but absolutely nothing is guaranteed. And there haven't been, if we're talking especially in Pennsylvania, there haven't been a lot of, or any state really that we cover, there haven't been a lot of successful lawsuits based on this. I'll say the lawsuits have come up based on this, but again, unless it's egregious, usually the disclaimers are sufficient to help protect. So I would say that the best source for entering in interior square footage is the best available source, which would be the public record if it's available. The next source you'd want to use is essentially if a seller or the owner is providing you with the information in writing, and make sure they're giving it to you in writing and you're saving that to the file and using that. I would not necessarily recommend any agent doing the measurements themselves, because at that point, again, you're not certified, you're not covered for that type of work, and it could only potentially create a legal liability if you're the person who is doing that for the client.
Yeah, the only reason why I asked that is out of curiosity, because, and I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of agents out there. Sometimes we go out to listing appointments, we bring the public record assessed, square footage, and they're like, no, that's not right. Blah, blah, blah. We get into these kind of back and forths about these things. So anyway, that's just a question that I had. All right. So I don't know if I should give you a drum roll for number one. I don't have a drum machine anyway, but let's get into the number one cause of real estate lawsuits in our area.
The number one cause is, I'll use the technical term first, which is tortious interference, which sounds downright medieval, right? And I guess for clients out there, again, well, not necessarily, I was going to say earmuffs, but no. Actually, this does apply to consumers and clients especially. And tortious interference is essentially contract interference, aka quote unquote poaching. And I want to emphasize this. When we see these things coming up, there's no one out there, or I'd say very few professionals out there, who are twirling their mustache like Snidely Whiplash and just hoping to see if I can't steal this client from somebody else. That's what's going on here. What's happening now is that we have been in a very low inventory market for quite a long time. There isn't another listing coming over the hill to replace one that I lose. So we're seeing is a very sensitive time in which agents are very well aware of where a former client might be going, and then the proximity to the end of their listing when the other listing begins. And there can be just assumptions that you must have interfered, which is not necessarily true. But I have to see the biggest driver of this is actually coming from customers and clients, because an exclusive right to sell is an exclusive right to sell, but sometimes a disgruntled agent or a disgruntled client or customer will begin to make calls if they think that their agent isn't performing as well as they should and start saying like, I really don't like this agent. I love you. You look perfect. I want to work with you. And then they don't get around to disclosing the fact that they're currently under an exclusive right to sell. So that's why it's so important for every agent out there when they're getting these calls coming in to make sure the first thing they're doing is confirm that this person is not currently under a listing agreement or an exclusive listing contract. That way you avoid tortious interference claims, and you also avoid any of the ethical claims that can potentially come around with that. Also, build into your business. If you're doing cold calling or anything like this, make sure you're building this into your script. So in your script, you're specifically making sure to ask at the very beginning, are you currently working with any other brokers or any other agents? And have it in your business plan explicitly that you do not interfere with the contracts of anyone else. Because what happens with a lot of these claims that come through is that one side is making the claim, and because a lot of this interference is happening either in person, I'd say not real interference, potential interference, or claims of interference, are happening on the phone or in person. What the other side's counsel is hoping on is that you have nothing in writing, that your script doesn't have anything about this, and your marketing plan has nothing about this. Then it's all up to whatever the imagination will hold, right? And it's he said, she said. But when you have this documented in your scripts and in your marketing plan that you do not interfere, and I make sure I ask about interference every single time, that's going to work heavily in your favor. And the other side's counsel is going to snap their fingers like, darn it, I was hoping you wouldn't have anything that was on record in order to do this. And again, document everything. If you're engaging with somebody on text related to this, save it, print it out as a PDF. Save it to file, put it in DTR so you know where it is and you don't have to worry about it. I cannot count on two hands the number of times that a potential mediation, arbitration, or lawsuit magically disappeared because our agent kept the receipts, especially text messages, because for some reason people think text messages are Snapchat and they just disappear and they're not discoverable. They absolutely are. And you wouldn't believe what folks on the other side have said or made claims on when arbitration, mediation, lawsuit that come in. And then we pull up the text message that our agent saved. They're like, oh, nuts. And then it just goes away. So the best way to address a lawsuit is to make sure it never happens in the first place. And please, agents out there, work with your sales leaders who can work with us. We can make that happen. So.
Well, and as you always know, get everything in writing, right? It doesn't matter what it is. Have it in writing, prove your case. It makes it much easier. And yes, as always, when we're dealing with clients in this market, and you had mentioned it's so turbocharged out there emotionally, the day-to-day things that we go through, both buyers, sellers, agents, brokers, everybody involved, it's moving at 100 miles an hour. And so you should always be asking your potential clients, are they working with another agent currently before you sign anything? You have that initial conversation with them. Always ask them if they are working with another agent at this point in time. All right. So
one last comment on
go ahead, Kurt.
Is that we have a saying in risk management, which is he or she who has the most paper wins. Document, document, document. Treat every engagement and every transaction that you're in as if it could become a legal issue. And if you treat it that way and document with that in mind, you'll prevent those legal issues from happening. And if they do happen, you'll make them go away really quickly, especially if you're doing everything that you know you should be doing. And our agents are fantastic, by the way. We have one of the lowest rates of getting lawsuits in our entire region, specifically because our agents are so professional, are so good at doing their job.
I do feel like we do a much better job. I guess I'm biased. I work for Roach, but I do feel like our agents are very professional in the marketplace. And when we come across one of our agents, it typically has a standard level of professionalism that you don't see other places. So
that's one of the reasons why I came to Fox.
There you go.
Having experience within the MLS and seeing what a low rate of issues that Fox and Roach agents had, that was a big driving factor to me wanting to work here. because I understood the level of professionalism.
I think you should double up as a recruiter. That's what I all right. All right. So last question before we get out of here. So in your line of work, what issue or issues plural keep you up most at night? What scares you the most currently?
What scares me the most currently, I would say in the market, it's again the agents' overzealousness. I wouldn't say overzealousness, but just that overwhelming drive to serve the client in stressful times when buyers are putting in 20 offers and they're getting rejected, and the pressure gets so high, they want to do so much for their clients, they end up overstepping the bounds from real estate services into legal services. That's the one that keeps me up at night the most. And what I try to emphasize the most is that as real estate sales folks and as licensees, you're legally and ethically prohibited from providing legal advice. And you have to put a hard line there. It's procedural. It's not based on your subjective opinion. You have to understand and build in any of the processes necessary to alert yourself when you might be getting into that line of crossing over, when you're empathizing perhaps too much with a customer or a client. And for example, I see this all the time when it comes to service animals versus pets, is that it's such a emotionally charged issue of landlords not wanting to respect a service animal note that comes in, when we're really talking about as a person with a disability, right? Who needs an animal for everyday life services, and them saying, I don't believe that that's actually necessary. And then it's communicating that your belief doesn't matter. It's the Fair Housing Act. And then being able to stop yourself and say, you need to talk to an attorney about this. Because again, this isn't about a pet. Service animals aren't pets. This is a Fair Housing Act issue. And you need to talk to an expert about this, who would be a real estate attorney, who would be the person to talk to you about this. And all you want to do is be like solution minded. You want to resolve this situation. And again, this is just an example, but this is an area where we can step over the line, start talking for the client instead of guiding them the appropriate sources that in the long run will be better for them, better for the brokerage, and better for them as agents. And just slow down, know when there's a warning sign, a red flag of acting as counsel, and then just slow down and then think about how to best respond. And this is a way that, by the way, your sales leaders in your offices are awesome resources for this. I work with them every day on issues just like this. It comes in inquiries about Section 8, things about that. How does a landlord handle that? We had an incident, by the way, where we had a rental unit that was over $5,000 a month, and then had an inquiry, do you accept Section 8 on the unit? And the agent was on top of the ball and pretty much assumed, I don't think my landlord even knows what to do with this, because they're probably not in that marketplace or haven't had to handle that request before. So they contacted the sales leader, they contacted me. We walked them through the process on how to keep arm's length on this, and make sure the answer is coming from the landlord. And that's the best thing that you can do. When something feels out of place, when something feels like it's out of your comfort zone, talk to your sales leader. Your sales leader brings us into it if necessary. And then we all work with you to get you to the happy, healthy place where your client's in the best position to succeed, you're in the best position to succeed, and then you have happy, healthy customers, buyers, sellers, landlords, renters. And that's the scenario that builds more business, that brings people back to you again. And then that's where you want to be. So use the tools that are available to you and don't rush. If you feel out of sorts on something, stop. Ask your manager, who can use their resources internally to get you to that happy, healthy place.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. We all want our clients to be happy, healthy, and hopefully settled in a new property at some point soon. Yes. Kurt, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you in some kind of class that you have coming up shortly.
Can I do one plug?
Yeah, do a plug.
So coming up in July, take a look at your email. We are having a risk management and Chat GPT class, an AI class coming up in July, where we go in detail into what Jason and I just discussed a little bit in detail this morning. But we will actually give you specific examples. A lot of what I discussed, we'll show it to you on screen, and we'll help you work through really what are the best ways to use Chat GPT, again, to keep you in that happy, healthy area and not potentially create additional risks for your business.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kurt. Well, everybody look out for that. Kurt, I'm going to actually be a part of that class because I'm going to need a refresher after this podcast anyway. So I will see you then. And again, man, thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That was the conversation with Kurt Miller. Here are a couple of takeaways that I had from talking to Kurt. Number one, Chat GPT may be great at a lot of things, but it is certainly not perfect with all things. And so you have to go back and really scrutinize what it is spitting out when you give it a topic to write about. Kurt specifically mentions MLS remarks as one of the problematic areas that you can find with Chat GPT, and that's for a number of reasons. But Kurt also mentions that it could be great for doing a marketing piece, or it could be great for a resume. You just have to double check what Chat GPT is spitting out to you. Make sure to proofread everything, give it your own voice, and make the changes that are necessary to keep it compliant with many of our rules and regulations. Which brings me to point number 2, know your rules and regulations, right? If you're going to be using Chat GPT, you have to be aware of laws. You have to be aware of what's compliant before you use Chat GPT. It can get you into a lot of trouble, specifically when it comes to fair housing laws or rental laws. These are things and topics that we need to know about. The legalities of these things can get us into hot water. So before you put something out there to the masses, make sure that you know your rules and regulations. Make sure that you're not violating any laws, and use ChatGPT properly. Lastly, Kurt touched upon the top 3 causes of real estate lawsuits in our area right now. Specifically, he talks about the overzealousness that sometimes we have as agents, that we want to help our people so badly that we overstep our bounds. Sometimes we just have to slow down, assess what we're doing, and make sure that we are not violating any real estate law. And if you're unsure about something contract-wise or something that you're doing, make sure that you talk to your broker or manager and get the answers that you need. Well, that's it for the podcast this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear something that I haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the podcast or left us a review yet, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.